scan reveals nothing and he goes home fine. However, 25 years later, at the age of 35, Timmy develops an untreatable form of brain cancer that later claims his life. Everybody in this room will have some degree of involvement with the healthcare system in their lifetime. And as patients, we trust our doctors with the most important of our possessions, our health. Children are particularly sensitive to radiation, and while the number of affected children is small, this amount of radiation greatly increases their chances of developing cancer early in life. Cases like Timmy's have also happened in the real world, as reported by the physician review website, Kevin MD, in its October 2005 article, Cause of Death in Defensive Medicine. Physicians appreciate the well-known fact that one missed test or scan could lead for grounds to win a lawsuit if the patient chose to sue. This leads doctors to order additional unnecessary tests solely for documentation purposes. Defensive medicine, or the practice of issuing these unnecessary tests or scans purely to avoid lawsuits, can have harmful or even fatal consequences. To put defensive medicine in perspective, imagine changing the oil in your car every single time you bought a tank of gas. It would cost an absurd amount of money and predispose your car to developing service complications earlier than they normally would. Because I intend to become a physician one day, this problem of patient care both intrigues and troubles me. I've read a number of articles and papers regarding the causes and solutions of this problem, and this research has led me to the conclusion that the current medical malpractice system is broken and in desperate need of reform. I believe that the United States federal government should develop a patient's compensation system that better handles medical malpractice claims and reduces the need for physicians to practice defensive medicine. To justify the need for this new policy, I will first explain the significance of the problem, then I'll cover some of the reasons that physicians actually practice defensive medicine, and I'll finally offer a solution. So first, let me begin with a shocking statistic. According to Dr. Rita Redberg's editorial, Cancer Risks and Radiation Exposure from CT Scans, in her December 2009 issue in the peer-reviewed Journal of the American Medical Association, the most comprehensive CT scans can deliver up to 400 times the amount of radiation of a single chest x-ray. This massive amount of radiation puts these patients, such as Timmy, at an increased risk for developing cancer earlier than they normally would. Most CT scans and other imaging techniques are used out of necessity for diagnosing and curing patients. But in some cases, doctors are using these expensive, harmful tests for low-risk patients that do not require them, as in Timmy's case. In the article, Comprehensive Solution Needed to Eliminate Lawsuit-Driven Medicine Costs, by Richard Jackson, accessed in March 2013 on the Jackson Healthcare website, he states that up to $850 million in healthcare spending is considered medically unnecessary. Even patients that deserve compensation for damages will spend 6 or 7 years sometimes tied up in the litigation process, and even then might not receive an award. To make matters worse, defensive medicine is not limited to one type of medical procedure. It wasn't limited to one type of medical procedure. The elite Massachusetts Medical Society published in their November 2009 study, Investigation of Defensive Medicine in Massachusetts, regarding the over-administration of a variety of medical procedures. This figure that was going to be here summarizes the results about physicians in Massachusetts. As you would have been, oh look, you can't see it now. As you can see, these tests ranged from lab tests to x-ray tests, and all of these were ordered for defensive reasons, so unnecessarily. Even here, 27.6% of CT scans, like the one that Timmy had, are ordered for defensive reasons. This is a really, really big number. So considering the wide and frequent use of defensive medicine and its involvement with risky procedures, it's important to consider why physicians actually use defensive medicine. So let's consider Timmy one more time. Timmy's doctor determined, without a CT scan, that in his professional opinion, it would be unlikely that Timmy would have any complications down the road. But if Timmy did have complications down the road, our current litigation system would hold his doctor responsible if Timmy chose to sue. Because the current system holds doctors responsible for unpredictable outcomes, there has been a drastic change in the doctor-patient relationship. In an article titled The Cost of Defensive Medicine, published on the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons website in November 2009, Dr. Stuart Weinstein led on that many physicians view every patient as a potential lawsuit. Doctors fear the monetary punishment and long, painful litigation process associated with these medical malpractice lawsuits. So, to cover all their bases, they practice defensive medicine and put patients at an increased risk while simultaneously costing the system hundreds of billions of dollars. So, now that we know that medical malpractice lawsuits can contribute to the cause of defensive medicine, let's consider a potential solution. Policymakers in the United States have unsuccessfully attempted to address this issue in the past. Our healthcare system needs a policy that both compensates victims fairly and allows physicians to practice without viewing every patient as a potential lawsuit. A healthcare policy group named Patients for Fair Compensation, in their article, A Proposed Solution Medicine accessed in March 2013 proposed a patient's compensation system to reduce our current medical malpractice judicial system. This new system would delegate the responsibility of maintaining high standards of practice for physicians to expert medical review boards rather than these medical malpractice lawyers that do it now. A separate compensation system would allow patients to receive compensation for any damages that they receive, and it would be much easier than the current system as well. Opponents of this new system might point out that the amount of money required to support the new administrative costs would further strain the already costly healthcare system. But, as I mentioned before, cutting unnecessary costs associated with defensive medicine in particular could save up to $850 billion in spending. Any reduction in spending could be used to fund this new system. And with this plan, doctors would be relieved of the daily stress of worrying about patients' lawsuits and be able to focus solely on the health and welfare of each and every one of their patients. Today, we've looked at a major problem specific to the United States healthcare system and its widespread affliction. We looked at why defensive medicine is so common and the reasons it won't change without our help. After understanding what defensive medicine was and why it's practiced, I suggested adopting